All right, what's up, Bridge 4? Welcome to another episode of Phantology. This is Steven. We're covering Way of Kings. Now, you may have heard of it before, and I have Ben on once again. Ben, how's it going?
Oh, well, Steven.
And we have a new guest, a first-time reader of the Stormlight Archive that we're going to kind of gear this episode around. His name is Daniel, and he's my roommate, and we're happy to have him on. Daniel, how's it going?
Good. I'm excited.
Nice. So we're gonna kind of gear this episode in a way so that it's like first time reading of The Way of Kings. A lot of listeners have read the book before, but they may be interested in the perspective of a newbie, or you kind of want to go back in time to remember how it was for you the first time you read it. Since we've read it a few times. So tell us a little bit about your history of fantasy book reading, and maybe just like your impression of the Stormlight Archive in general, because going into Stormlight Archive is a pretty big commitment. It's a big book. There's a lot going on. How was that?
Yeah. Okay. I've done a little bit of fantasy reading. It's been a long time though. I feel like college knocked everything out for me. All leisurely reading went out the window at that point, just with all the reading. But in the past, I have gotten into some fantasy reading. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of people like Harry Potter. That was something that I got into.
Sure.
Yeah, I read them multiple times. I like Aragon series. I thought that was pretty good. Artemis Fowl. So those are a couple of the series that I liked.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't covered Aragon. We did. Ben and I both read Artemis Fowl, and we reviewed it for the podcast, right?
We did.
Oh, wow.
Steven was not very complimentary about the movie, though.
So. Oh, yeah. I still need to see that.
Oh, no, you don't. The movie was a mess.
Okay.
Hard pass on that. And the Aragon movie, also terrible.
Yeah, I didn't like the Aragon movie at all. They strayed so far from the book. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Ironically, Poloni posted like a defense on Twitter just today about the movie. I just saw it when I was scrolling through, so it was funny.
Oh, he liked it?
I didn't stay long. I've never seen the movie or read the book, so I didn't know if it was like a tongue-in-cheek type thing. But he was like, "You can't top the movie." So I don't know if it was the sarcastic or just like actually defending it.
Okay.
I hesitate to say too much because he's been active on our Twitter polls, so I don't want to like, just
put words in his mouth. Yeah.
But.
Yeah. He actually just released a new science fiction book not too long ago that I read earlier this year. So he's writing again.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about Way of Kings. So Daniel's read a little bit of fantasy, and after those more kind of YA things, you decided to jump right into like the most dense, I mean, not the very most dense, but a very involved series. The Way of Kings is 1,000 pages long, and there's a ton going on. So was that a bit jarring at all, or like did it take a while for you to catch your breath going into it?
I don't think it took that long, to be honest. I think there were a couple of moments that really caught me. So one of those moments at the very beginning was with Kaladin, and he was in the slave trade, and they're like he was in the wagon, and he saw the slave just getting killed, and like that scene, I think started to hook me. Like, I mean, Seth, he was very fascinating, but then that scene with Kaladin just really hooked me in. So I don't think it took me too long to get into it. And then with college reading, I feel like this wasn't too dense. I thought it was very like like the characters are complex, but not too complex at all. So,
man, I thought you would have been hooked when you had like somebody on the very first page like walking on walls and stuff.
Yeah, that definitely intrigued me. So
yeah, you're like, what is this guy doing? He's like falling from the ground up to the ceiling. He's slicing through people with this weird big sword.
Yeah,
and I guess not very first page, because it starts with the prelude, which was probably still a little confusing to you. Like, can you think back to the prelude? Like, any notion of what's going on there yet?
Yeah, I just remember the two guys. It was after this like large like battle, which was one of the desolations, I think, and they were leaving like humans behind. They were like saying, we're done with this. And it was
Yeah,
9, I think.
Right. There was some kind of like thing that was being broken, and they were putting their big swords into the ground, and they talked about leaving someone behind.
Yeah.
And I guess we're not going to talk too much about that. If you're not sure what's going on, we'll leave that to you to discover as you go through. We're not going to do spoilers past Way of Kings. If you are listening and have only read the first book, we don't want to spoil for Daniel.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to do that to Daniel. He's been gracious enough to come on here.
Yeah. Okay, so let's before we jump too much into the plot, let me just say, if you like what we're doing at Phantology, you can find more at www.phantologybooks.com, and you can support the show at patreon.com/phantology_books. So that out of the way, I wanted to ask you, Daniel, to kind of guide the conversation here.
Okay.
Which of these aspects of the book did you like the most? The characters, the world building, or the plot in general?
That's a hard question, because each one of them, I feel like he nailed it on each one in different aspects.
Yeah.
I loved seeing how deep the characters were. Like, you could see multiple sides of them. You could see, Kaladin getting frustrated. You could see Dalinar, like, deciding to give up his, high princedom.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you could see them making huge sacrifices. So you could see that they had multiple elements to each of the characters, which I loved about that. So I thought that was really, really important. The world building was also really fascinating, just because it is a departure from our world in such a large way.
Yeah, it's not like your typical European-esque setting that a lot of epic fantasies go for.
Yeah, exactly. Which I loved. And I loved how each of the different parts of Rochar have unique things about them. And so that especially with the interludes, I think that intrigued me. For example, the one where there was that guy who was studying the Spren, and like with the tattooed beggar or something like that. Like, that was hilarious. Or, no, not the tattooed beggar, the tattooed guy who's studying the Spren. That was fun.
Right. I think Axes the Collector, is that that dude? Yeah,
I think
he's interesting.
And then the other part was the plot. Yeah, the plot was really good too.
So you loved it all. Too hard to make a choice.
Yeah, I would say probably the characters, though. The characters definitely drove it, and I think that's probably the best way to have it go. But I mean, the other points were pretty strong too.
Okay, your decision has been made. The lot has been cast.
I've cast my vote.
I think that's important because, I mean, I think characters are the strongest suit as well. I remember when my brother was telling me about this book back in like 2011, he was like, it's about a slave who is trained as a surgeon who becomes a warrior. And I was like, it just sounds like an interesting character. You know what I mean? Like, so many different parts of those conflicting identities would make a very, very like intriguing person. And the other thing is, a book might have a strong plot, but with an epic fantasy like this, where there's going to be 10 books down the line, some books are going to have better plots than others in that series. But if you're not hooked with the characters, then you're not going to make it through it. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably the most important thing to really nail at the first book are those characters.
Yeah, I agree with that. My favorite book is Name of the Wind, and there's not a whole lot of plot in the book, to be honest. Like, things happen for sure, but there's no big epic battles like you'd hope for in a fantasy. But the characters are so awesome that, like, I don't care. You just hang out with these guys forever. And I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm fine to hang out with Bridge 4 and Kaladin and the boys and collect the sapweed stuff or whatever that is, and get some gems, and then go down in the salvage crew and the chasms, like all of those things. I could do that forever just because I like all the characters so much.
Yeah. You just want to spend some time with Rock around the campfire, eating some of his stew, stew, like that just sounds like an ideal way to spend an evening.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so which character was your favorite then, Daniel? And we'll start breaking them down.
Awesome. Well, I think I've talked with you about this a little bit, Stephen. at different times I was intrigued by different characters. So Seth, in my opinion, he had some of the most jaw-dropping moments, or I mean, at the very beginning and middle part for me.
Yeah.
Dalinar, the moment when he was like trying to figure out, okay, do I want to stay on or leave? Like he's got some interesting stuff. But at the very end, I think Kaladin was the one who I was most intrigued by. I loved like just his he was gonna go get it no matter what the cost was. Like at those moments where he's like, I don't care what this means or what I'm gonna have to sacrifice. I'm gonna do it if it means saving someone.
You've chosen correctly.
Good.
Yeah, I think most people, most readers are most attached to Kaladin. I think in part just because of the way that Sanderson deals with his chronic PTSD and depression, and people can just relate to that on a human level. And that really just draws you in. And you'll see as the series goes on how that progresses, but it's handled really well in a really believable and authentic way. And I think people just appreciate that and latch onto that.
Yeah. And I loved his backstory, like learning about like his relationship with Tien and like the terrible things that happened to his family. Like, but I don't know. I loved just learning everything because, I mean, even seeing his decision to become a soldier, like that wasn't, I mean, he was wanting to do that in the beginning, but then after a while, he's like, no, I'm going to be a surgeon. I'm going to, do what my family thinks. I just loved the development of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it kind of started at the whole honor chasm moment, right? Ben, I know this is something that you've kind of talked about before. This is a moment that you like.
Oh. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the more gripping parts of the book, right? Like it, for one, it shows how his and Still's relationship just is so important to him and so kind of fundamental because she kind of talks him off the ledge a little bit. Doesn't that happen? Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. She brings him the poisonous black Spain or whatever it's called.
And she's
I'm
like,
not remembering the name of any plants, right. Apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he kind of is able to kind of switch gears and kind of pull himself out. And I think it's really important because he never, like, even though Kaladin's character progresses and he never like breaks out of depression, which I think is a very realistic portrayal. Like he'll get off of the precipice, but it's always kind of there for him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is one reason why people love it so much is because it just shows him kind of at his worst times and at his best times. But even in his best times, he still has kind of this thing that is afflicting him. And so, yeah, I did like that part a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So how about when he takes on leadership of Bridge 4 and the crew starts to come together? I mean, these are some, maybe not fist pump moments, but these are some real feel good moments when we always kind of know what Kaladin's potential is. And then when you see him taking on the leadership and fulfilling it, it's really satisfying.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And I thought it was interesting because in a real world situation, a person in such a hopeless situation, deciding to take charge in some format, like a lot of people are going to be like, no, like I don't want any of this. Like you're trying to do something that's not going to work, but him consistently, like after the honor chasm, him consistently, like, taking those steps to help others, like people just go after that. Like it's just, I love that. And I love how he can see like the potential of others to help out with that process with like Rock, for example.
Uh-huh.
He could see how Rock could bring people together in a way that he maybe couldn't have done, with the soup and everything. So
yeah, I think it's especially like crazy considering his character because as you learn his backstory, he had tried to become a leader with slave rebellions, and it just every time ended up in like everybody getting killed, right? And somehow he would survive. But like, and you also like learn kind of that he had like a girlfriend who got killed as well, like when he was a slave, right? Like you have all these times where he kind of assumed that leadership mantle and just got cut down for it. I mean, even with the Sharpblade thing with his crew. You know, it's just so crazy that he kept on finding himself in that position and was able to put himself in that position time and time again to become a leader, even though it hadn't worked out for him in the past. I also love one of my favorite scenes of the whole book was when he just went over and started carrying that big log or whatever, and he just like did laps, and everyone was like looking at him like, what is this Joker doing? You know, it was just such a cool way for him to kind of start being a leader and start kind of leading by example. Even if nobody was going to follow him, he was going to go be a better man himself. And I think that's really the essence of his character.
Yeah, I like both of those points. I like what you said, Daniel, about him kind of selecting Rock, and he does this with others, you know, as well. He kind of makes Teft the drill sergeant, right? He's able to see the potential in people, and he knows that while he is charismatic to an extent, he can't be kind of that ray of sunshine that some of these other guys can be, like Rock. And I think that's the sign of good leadership, to put people in the right position so everyone can succeed.
Yeah, I thought it was also cool that, you know, Teft is the one that ended up saving him. Was it Teft or Sigil that had that? It was Teft, right?
Teft.
Yeah, that like saved him after the storm. And so it was cool that he like, you know, ultimately kind of trained the person that would save him. I also thought, I had a point to make, but I think I might have slipped my mind. I'll come back to it.
It'll come back. Let's talk about Syl and magic and high storms and how is all that working with the Stormlight? So one big moment here is when Kaladin gets strung up to be killed, executed by the Stormfather, by the high storm, and he survives somehow. Daniel, what are you kind of thinking in terms of the magic and what do we have here? And was this a moment that was kind of like a light bulb for you?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was necessarily a light bulb, but it definitely pointed me to, like, there's something greater going on. Like, most people would have died in that situation, but something was in essence protecting Kaladin, and Syl seemed to be there with him during that moment. And so, yeah, kind of that magic. It seemed like Kaladin wasn't just by himself in that moment. So,
and he obviously, I mean, the Stormlight and the gemstones, that's obviously the source of the magic. I believe he also heard the voice of the Stormfather. I think he said Odium reigns, this ominous thing going on. So hints at this larger conflict that we might be getting into. Like maybe it's more than just this simpler conflict as these slaves are trying to survive. So that's something that I really appreciate. There's all these layers to the story. There's the base kind of human conflicts, and then there's the whole, you know, whatever it is going on with these like much larger, maybe god-like figures almost.
I love some of the artwork on Reddit of that scene of like Syl like standing in front of him and kind of like warding off the storm or trying to. Same with, there's a cool piece of art when Kaladin was almost dead, and there was like the rot spren or the death spren, and it showed like Syl like fending them off with a sword. It was
that's
really
a good
cool.
one. Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing that I love about these books is there's such a thriving community around them that you can just like go online and absorb yourself and just like appreciate other people's artwork that kind of branch off of it. Maybe don't do that until you're done reading the series. Most people are pretty respectful of spoilers, but
the internet is always, you know, a little dark and full of spoilers. So ask me and I'll show you stuff. Cool. Okay, let's talk about the backstory and the flashbacks and everything. That's a little bit of a different structure to the story. So I know some people have said that, you know, they love the story of Bridge 4, and then when it's like back in Hearthstone healing people, they're like, yeah, I don't really care about this. I want to hear about Bridge 4. How are the backstories for you? Was it too jarring? Was it just right?
I loved the backstory. I felt like that was so necessary to like further the story. because the backstory kind of gives you an idea of what Kaladin wants and why, and what has happened to him in the past. I think it also shows you like this. It doesn't entirely show everything, but it kind of shows the motivations behind why he wants to protect the, those that can't protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gives you a reason to believe that, as he's moving forward.
And then what about the ultimate betrayal? Once we, the hook throughout a lot of the book is what happened to Kaladin, right? Like, what is this missing piece in his backstory? And then when you find out everything that went on with Amaram and the shard bearer that he killed, and then the betrayal of Amaram and killing his men, that pretty shocking and devastating to you when that finally came out?
Yeah, like totally. Like Amaram's the worst. So no, but it was shocking because I knew that something went on so that Kaladin didn't trust any of the Light Eyes, right?
Right.
And he and earlier in some of the flashbacks, it showed him like, oh yeah, Amaram, like I can trust him, maybe not all of the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I didn't necessarily picture it that jarring, like that scene where he was gonna, shut the windows basically, or, put the
right
over the windows. And I mean, that was just. That was, there were 3 moments in the book where I was like, I need to set it down for a little bit because like this is a lot, and that was one of those moments where I was just like, I hate Amaram. So
yeah, that was crazy. And there's space between where Kaladin succeeded in killing the shard bearer, right? Like I can't remember the exact sequence, but like
there's some separation.
Okay, but it was such a cool scene where he like stuck the guy through the visor plate or whatever with his knife, or that like because his spear got like cut, and then he like was able to do that. And you're just like riding the high of that flashback, right? And then you're just like body slammed by like this horrible event that happened. And so yeah, it's just as the highs and lows of that book are just crazy.
The hatred that he has for the Light Eyes can sometimes be a little annoying. You're like, come on, man, get over yourself. But then when you actually get what happened, it seems pretty justified, right? Like, I don't think I trust the Light Eyes either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
totally.
And especially with what happened with his city lord with
Roshan.
Roshan, yeah, like
yeah.
So he's like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on like he's not gonna. Like he gets let down by Roshan, then he gets let down by Amaram. I mean, who else is he supposed to like let himself get let down by?
Dalinar. Is Dalinar gonna let him down?
No, he's not.
I don't know.
Okay, let's put it over to Dalinar. We spent a lot of time on Kaladin, but that's fair because the book it's Kaladin's book mostly with his backstories.
Before we move on, Daniel, are you aware of like the structure of the books, like how each of them will focus on one of the main characters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think overall that's one of the coolest like structures too. It's like each book like deep dive into one of these characters.
Yeah, yeah. I love that.
So Dalinar, there's a lot of Dalinar, but not as much as there is in some other books. So main things with him are the whole visions and this admonition to unite them, whatever that means, and this struggle that he has with upholding the old traditions and deciding if he wants to advocate to Adolin. So he's this very conflicted character, and we're seeing him not in the twilight of his age, but more like kind of the golden years are coming on him. Like you get a sense that he was this real formidable guy in the past, the Blackthorn people call him, and now Adolin's a little disappointed in him because he just sits around and reads his book. And so all of that said, what was your impression of Dalinar, Daniel?
Yeah, I feel like I connect with Dalinar pretty well. I don't know. Are
you seeing visions? Like, are you, like waking up with scratches on your wall that count down to some event?
That's in the next book.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. No, but I just love like his conflict because He's having these visions. People are seeing him as crazy. Even his sons are like, what are you talking about? Like, no one can fully understand what is happening to him. He doesn't understand what's happening to him. But at the same time, like, he's bold enough and strong enough to say, I want to figure this out. And I really like that about Dalinar. He's very genuine, and he's very true to what he thinks is right.
In the face of a lot of opposition, right?
Yeah.
And chiefly from Sadeas. So between Amaram and Sadius, can't remember how they pronounce it. Which one of these characters is more hated by you, Daniel? Both great villains.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Amaram, so that changes things a little bit. Sadeas, I still feel like he's still kind of a complex character, because during the assassination, I mean, he led off, he went off in another direction, kind of as a self-sacrifice kind of thing. So I still feel like there's some things that I don't know about him. I hated when he left. That was terrible.
That was a gut punch.
Yeah, it was a huge gut punch. Both to Dalinar and to Kaladin and their crew.
And Adolin.
Yeah. I would say Amaram for right now, just because it was so personal and I don't know much about him. But once I found out more about Sadeas, I think he could definitely be.
Okay, so because Amaram messed with our guy Kaladin, that is unforgivable to you. Dalinar, he can be messed with. Maybe he's a little more thick-skinned, so we don't hate Sadeas quite as much.
He does have a shard plate.
Yeah.
Pretty thick-skinned.
No, I think
pretty thick.
I still feel like I want to figure out Sadeas a little bit more before I mention anything. Like, I still feel like he's pretty awful, but there may be some good left in him. So I want to figure that out.
It's interesting how there's a lot of characters that have kind of this greater good motivation. Like, you get the sense that the reason that Sadeas abandoned Dalinar was because, for the good of Alethkar, we need to get rid of you because you're causing problems. And Amaram, I believe, said something to the effect of, I'm going to be the one who needs to take this Shardblade because I can do the most good with it. And Taravangian, who you don't know a ton about, but you do get at the end, he's also like a greater good. Like, he's bleeding these people dry in his hospitals in order to get their prophecies for some unknown reason. I think it's a common thread through the books, but I think it's a good villain. It's a good way to form your villains, because then they become these gray characters. You can't just say like, this guy's pure evil. Like, at some level he is trying to do good, but he's misguided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also shows that like the way people value life is so different. Like, Sadeas has no problem like sending bridge crews to their death. Yeah. And does that make him super evil? Like, I don't know, like, yes, but also he's not the only one doing it. Like, Dalinar is still going to war for these gems that are kind of meaningless, so it's kind of interesting. Just because somebody places a different value in life doesn't necessarily make them evil. And it also, like, it shows that like Sadeas's like his betrayal at the end was in that same vein. He's like, yes, I'm sacrificing a lot of life, but at the same time, this greater good. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk about the big climax, because we've covered Kaladin, we've covered Dalinar. I think we're ready to kind of get into that big moment. It's the Battle of the Tower, and they get betrayed, and it looks like, the Parshendi are surrounding them. Dalinar and Adolin are doomed, and then Kaladin, who's fortunately there, decides to turn around and put the bridge down, and he runs out and gives his oath and explodes in light, and then is awesome for a while and saves the day. So I'm assuming this was one of your three like big job moments. This was an awesome climax for me. Like, there's so many payoffs to things that are hinted out throughout the book.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this was a huge moment, I feel like, for a variety of reasons. It brings the characters together. You get Kaladin and Dalinar together, and that's exciting. Later on in the climax, you also see how Shallan might come to the Shattered Plains, and
Yeah.
they might meet up. And so it's this kind of cool moment where you see, and then Seth will be coming also to the Shattered Plains. It's kind of a cool and satisfying moment where you're like, oh, wow, everything starts to wrap at least somewhat together in a way. But also it's just a lot of like emotion that you feel as this is happening. You feel strong emotion about Sadeas, like especially the moment. Yeah, especially the moment when you hear him, because I mean he leaves, but when you see him leaving and he turns around and he says, you shouldn't trust in me or something like that. You're like, you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also the moment that Kaladin made the decision to turn around. I wasn't sure what to feel as a character, as a reader, because I'm like, Kaladin, this is everything you've wanted. You can just escape with your crew, and you can like use the bridge to get across the plains, and you can just like make a new life for yourself. And then you're like, man, so part of you is just wanting him to leave everybody, but then you're like, no, he's gonna turn around. And so, but that, yeah, him jumping over that chasm, oh my gosh, is just awesome. So yeah, top moment of any fantasy book for me, like gotta be in the top 10 right there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about very top, but top 10. I can see that. Yeah. So he swears this oath. Do you have any suspicion of what that means or why that is significant, Daniel?
So isn't it one of the oaths of like the Knights Radiant, they say, or something like that?
I think they say codes. That. Yeah. So the first oath is life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. And then he swore his second oath, which powered him up in some way.
Yeah, definitely. So
you'll definitely see more of that going forward. Yeah.
I guess two other things that I wanted to mention. Going along with Ben's point, I feel like the moment where Kaladin decided to turn around, that was a huge moment. Like that was a big decision. And not only was it a decision that affected him, it affected all of Bridge 4. But I felt like it was very fitting for Kaladin's character. Like even though he's had terrible things happen to him with the Light Eyes, he was like, no, there are a ton of other soldiers there that are gonna get completely slaughtered if I don't turn around. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know how, they could do anything, but he decided to turn around anyways. And I think that was very fitting for Kaladin to do that.
Yeah. I also loved when he like rescued Adolin. I hope I'm remembering this right, because it's been a while, and he's just like starts giving Adolin orders, and you're like, yeah, suck it, Adolin, like listen to Kaladin,
They have a good relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think they had met before, right? Because Kaladin had seen him stop one of Sadis's men from like.
Did they meet, or I think he just like saw him in the army camp?
Saw him. Yeah,
definitely saw him in the army camp. It was like, this like I think it was like a harlot or someone like getting beaten up or something like that, and in the camp, and so.
Yeah, and Adolin kind of stepped in. But yeah, that was because the whole time you're like, oh, I just want to see like Adolin and Kaladin, because they're very like different people, right? Adolin's very like happy-go-lucky, like I'm just like this very charismatic person, and Kaladin's more of like this brooding, like like the whole world's out to get me type very personality. Yeah, and so you just kind of want to see how they would hit it off, and then the fact that they get to do that like in the middle of this epic battle it was kind of a fun payoff too.
Yeah.
Okay. One more on this before we switch over to Shallan. So Dalinar gives up his shard blade. Ben laughs at Shallan. So Dalinar gives up his shard blade. So this is another big moment in the climax, because even though the day is saved, they come back and Sadeas is like, give me back my bridgement. And this is another big decision, because Kaladin, this could have been like fool me thrice, right? Like yet again, a Light Eyes has betrayed me, but no, because Dalinar is a man of honor, and he gives up this priceless weapon, right? So it really just kind of speaks to the person that Dalinar is. He's willing to basically, I guess, provide recompense for the incredible service that has been done to him. He feels like he owes these guys.
Definitely. In my opinion, I think there are two things that are important to this. First, I mean, it also fits in with Dalinar's character. I feel like, but it was a huge surprise at the same time. It was like, oh my goodness, that's great. The second thing I want to mention though is he didn't just give up the shard blade at that moment. He also made a decision to give up his shard plate to his younger son to fulfill, a promise to him. And I don't know if that actually happens later, but that tells me a lot about Dalinar. He's not in it necessarily for himself. He's in it to help, people to fulfill his promises to do, like the right things. And also like Adolin, I think Adolin's an important part in this process too, because he gives up his shard plate to Dalinar at that time, which I love. And Adolin really shows his loyalty to his dad during that final climax as well.
Yeah, like Ben said, Adolin is a foil for Kaladin in some respects, but someone that we, can't help but love, even though he can be kind of pompous sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that this book did really well in showing the transition from Dalinar, maybe from being like this war hero, like this fighter, to being maybe more political. One of my like least favorite, but also most favorite scenes of the book is when Dalinar is just like digging a latrine pit. Yeah. And he's just like going so hard with his shard blade or like the shard hammer or whatever the heck that was. And he's just like contemplating life. I was very annoyed at the scene when I was reading it because I was like, this is just ridiculous navel gazing. But then like looking back on it, it's one of my favorite scenes to kind of think back on like the growth that Dalinar experiences throughout the book. And then I feel like that all kind of culminates in his willingness to kind of, in saving Kaladin from Stadius, he's kind of like saying, okay, I'm giving up this part of myself. I'm ready to unite them. I'm not going to be this person that's going to continually fight,
Yeah.
So
I had forgotten about the latrine pit digging scene. Okay, let's talk about Shallan. So she's got a plot line that doesn't really overlap with our, the main focus of the book, but she is in it for a significant portion. She comes in kind of this happy-go-lucky girl. By the end, we get some hints that there's something much darker, possibly in her past. And she tries to become Yasna's apprentice for nefarious reasons, right? She's trying to rip her off the whole time. So right away, like there's some layers to her. And even though she seems to be, this kind of pretty flower pot headed girl, like really
flower pot.
I don't know. There's not
I'm looking forward to you writing your first female character, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that's a bad thing. She's not dumb. She's
very capable.
She's got a lot of wit to her. What I'm trying to ask, Daniel, is did you like Shallan's portions?
I liked her at times, and then I hated her at times.
That's fair. That's a fair, yeah.
Like when she stole the Soulcaster, I was livid. Like I was like, how dare you steal the Soulcaster, even though you're doing it for your family?
Because you feel stealing is wrong in general, or you just like Yasna a lot, or you felt like it was going to lead her down bad paths?
Yeah, it was a combination of all three of those, I think.
Okay.
So at the moment, I was like, okay, there are these weird symbol head things going on, and I was like, oh, I mean, what are these things? Are they the what are they called? The Void Bringers or something like that? Is she going to be like one of the evil characters in the future? But like Yasna was like showing a ton of trust in Shallan by taking her on, and you really like Shallan and her persistence at becoming her ward, and like becoming her apprentice. And so I mean, in my opinion, I got excited because she was like making some progress, and all of a sudden, at the moment where Yasna killed those 4 dudes out in the alleyway, and then she steals the Soulcaster, you're like, oh no, she's going down the wrong path. She's, yeah.
Although kind of a questionable decision by Yasna to execute those guys.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, led to some interesting philosophical discussion. Yasna is a very interesting character. who we're going to explore more. You don't get a whole lot of her, but she's actually one of my favorites later on. So I think what you're referring to when you say you're worried that Shallan was going to become the bad character is like in the back, on the back side of the book, there's this weird thing written by who knows, by some character, right, that's like gazing upon the whole series that says like there's 5 characters and one of them will betray them or let them down or something like that. Is that kind of what you're suspicious of?
Yeah, definitely.
I had forgotten all about this and now I'm worried. What is this? Is this
it's on the back? It's on the back of the book, on the back of the hardcover.
What is this, like actual canon, or is it just?
Yeah, I've got it right here if you want to see.
Yes. Oh my goodness! The first cert. Oh, who's writing that?
It's I can tell you later who's writing it.
Well, I guess does the name start with a K of who's writing it?
No.
Oh, what? Okay, you tell me later.
It's not super important to the plot, but it is like a Cosmere thing. I'll let you know. I'll let you know on Discord who's writing it. Side note, if you want to talk to us about Way of Kings or any other stuff, then hop on our Discord. Invites are in the episode description. Okay, so Shallan, other moments for Shallan. She steals the Soulcaster. It goes very poorly. She fakes her slashing of wrists in order to cover something weird that she does in Shadesmar, and then it's like Yasna accepts her and off they go. I'm kind of summarizing a lot there.
So Steven, your favorite scene happened in this book, right? With her friendly pirate person. Yalb?
Yeah, I like Yalb and the book buying thing. I just think it's fun because I like books and I like the little bargaining and the trickery there. So that right away kind of like drew me into the character. That's a side note. That's a super small.
Steven really likes to keep track of our characters' purses. I think that's also why it's your favorite book is Name of the Wind, just because there's a lot of token counting, purse counting in that book.
In another world, I'm an accountant, apparently. So anything else worth mentioning? I mean, we have Capsule, her relationship there.
Were you ever convinced that tell us your experience with Capsule.
Was that a shock? Was that a shock that he was up to no good?
Oh yeah, that definitely was a shock. That was the very like almost kind of jarring scene as well, just because you had Capsule, who was betraying. I mean, he was trying to kill Yasna, and he almost killed Shallan. Mm-hmm. You also had a very interesting scene where Shallan decided to pull out the Soulcaster at the very end because she thought she was going to die. Mm-hmm. And a very, very important, I think, moment there. I would say before that, I was pretty disappointed in Shallan, and I was like kind of angry with her. But after, when she was persistent about, continuing with Yasna, like I liked seeing that and seeing, okay, she's got something good coming up. There are two. I feel like it was a sandwich, like on the outskirts, like when she's trying to convince Yasna. Like I really liked her. I thought she was cool. Then when she betrayed Yasna, I was like, oh, no. And then after that, she's got some cool stuff.
It sounds like you really like your characters to be like very honest, like upstanding people that like just can't fit in this like mold. Which
that's very Sanderson though. Like a lot of bad things happen, but the tone throughout his books is always kind of this hopeful undertones. He's similar to a lot of other authors who are maybe a little bit darker, but it's always with a tinge of the good side in the Sanderson books.
Yeah.
Okay, should we skip to Szeth? No, wait, actually, I wanted to ask you about the revelation that Yasna thinks that the Parshmen are the Voidbringers. Do you have any theories, or what do you make of this?
I also want to add in like your views on Parshmen in general. Like, were they just cannon fodder for our heroes to slay, or like, I mean, what do you think of them as?
Yeah, were they just orcs or what?
Yeah.
I think Yasna's prediction is a little bit bogus. In my opinion, I'm gonna call it out right there. So we'll see.
Strong prediction.
Ooh.
Strong prediction.
I mean, Yasna's pretty smart. So,
She is smart, but I think she's off here.
But the symbol heads might be the Voidbringers too. So
well, I don't know. They're those rock creatures as well. So I'm still trying to figure out them and
the Thunderclasts. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, trying to figure out all of this. But what I would say is I think Dalinar, when he's been fighting these Parshmen, he's been seeing civility in them. When I forget his name, the guy on Kaladin's team who's a Parshman.
But
Yeah, I don't remember, but but when he was protecting like the dead, like that's pretty cool. I don't think they're these brutish creatures. Even if perhaps the Voidbringers might even be kind of good, or they're just a different group of people. Perhaps that's one perspective to have. But I don't think the Parshmen are the Voidbringers. Because it seems like so with each of the desolations, it sounds like the Voidbringers come and and almost wipe out a lot of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they seem to be like that. They seem to honor and respect the wounded, like near the end.
Okay.
They definitely show a lot of honor, right? Like they don't like their dead being messed with. They like will only fight. Like they won't surround you and fight you. Like they seem to fight in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one reason why like Kaladin, and Dalinar kind of feel a lot of sympathy with them sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Daniel's on record. He thinks Yasna is wrong.
Yes.
The foremost scholar in Roshar. I don't know if that's true or not, but she's pretty formidable. Okay. Let's talk about Szeth because I know Szeth is one of your favorites, and then we'll kind of get to some closing points. So he wasn't in the book a lot. He only shows up for a few interludes, but he made enough of an impression on you, obviously. So what was it about him?
Oh, yeah. Definitely a fascinating character. I think the thing that really drew me into Szeth was, first, he was super powerful, but he didn't care about that. Second, I think just his interest and intrigue in following, I don't know what the principles are of, not touching the rocks at the very beginning. And there's a lot of guilt that he's holding within him. And I think that's really fascinating because he doesn't let himself truly be honest with himself and what he's doing. There are a couple of moments in the book where he's like, is what I'm doing wrong? Then he immediately turns away from that and like, no, I must follow. So
yeah, he comes from this very different society than the Alethi, obviously. So he's from Shinovar. He's a Shin person. And if you remember, there's that interlude with Rissyn where I believe this is this book where they're like going off to trade somewhere in this like grassland, and her master, her Baps, gives her this pot of grass. That's this book, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So that's in Shin. And because of the way that, or that's in Shinovar, and because of the way that the mountains like form a ring around it, it's actually a lot more like Earth. And then the culture is different as well. So there's kind of these very separate people that you'll learn more about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say, one last thing about Szeth, that probably one of the most, if not the most jaw-dropping moments was when he was going to assassinate that guy in the palace.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Not Terravon.
Not Terravon. Okay.
But the other one where he sees the guy's head already on the table or whatever it is.
Okay.
And then the head of his previous master dropped. And you realize that someone very, very powerful, or someone that at least knows how powerful Szeth is, now will be his master. And so that was a huge moment just because you could see, okay, huge destruction can come now.
You get a glimpse at kind of the dark underpinnings of the Roshar political climate. There's some nefarious stuff going on.
Yeah, definitely.
And Szeth has now been tasked in the next book with some problematic things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely look forward to, in Words of Radiance, when you finish Way of Kings, you look forward to all the characters coming together because they've been separated for so long, and now Kaladin and Dalinar are finally together. But Shallan's coming in, Zeth is coming in, the Desolations or whatever is going on is coming in. So big thunder clouds are looming, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up. I did want to ask you, who is your favorite Bridge 4 member? Do you have a favorite? Not counting Kaladin. Rock is
cool. I think Teft. Teft is my favorite. Yeah. I don't know. I think he's very loyal to Kaladin, and he really. I mean, he's about to say. I mean, his goal is basically to save Kaladin, and a lot of the other Bridge 4 are pretty loyal to are loyal to Kaladin, but Teft has been there almost since the beginning, almost before Rock. Rock was the first one, but then Teft has been there, the whole time.
I'm gonna say my favorite's Lopin.
the Lopin.
Yeah, the Lopin. Yeah. Is it though? I don't know. Gosh, Rock is also a real strong contender.
Yeah.
Ben, you have a favorite?
It's hard for me to not to choose my favorite from if I was only thinking about book
fair.
one. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yep.
So I don't want to give away any spoilers.
All right.
There's
Ben will abstain.
Yeah. There's one person I think you probably know who I'm talking about that, progress
Sure.
becomes a
Okay.
favorite, so.
Sure. Okay, so Daniel, maybe you don't know this, but we close out a lot of our episodes with a segment that we call the worst of the best, where we talk about a really cool moment or thing or a character or something that happens in the book that we really liked, except there was one thing about it that was oh, okay, that was kind of lame, or that ruined it for me a little bit. So that's what we're going to close with. Try to think now if you have your moment. Sorry, I should have prepared you for this. But
you can go last.
I want to go last.
And it sounds like Ben has one on mind.
Yeah. So I think that the worst of the best for me was Kaladin's time as a slave, because it sets him up great as a character. It's one of the best parts of the book. I think this shapes him a ton, but at the same time, we don't really ever dive into his time leading the slaves, his girlfriend that he had. And it really still pains me to this day that we're probably never gonna find out more about that time, because we've kind of moved on from his backstory after this, right? We start focusing on other people's backstory. And so I really wish that we had learned about these other slaves that he tried to run away with. It makes me want just kind of a novella of just this time in his life, exploring these moments. And so
it's a bleak novella.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these. Yeah, I love that aspect of him as a character, but I just wish that we had gotten more from that time. Maybe taken some of his Hearthstone time where he was being cheered up by Tien with rocks, and kind of focus more on that period of his life. So
okay,
that's my worst of the best.
Mine is going to be the feasts at the war camps that Dalinar and Adolin and Sadeas and all the big powerful Leides participate in. I really like them because of the presence of wit for the majority, and he's an awesome character and he's fun. However, I just think the politics in general in the book drag on a little much in the Dalinar portions. And I feel like the feasts are in there in order to have Dalinar doing something other than fighting, because there's a lot of bridge run scenes. And so Sanderson was like, well, I got to have him develop somehow. So, let's throw him into a feast. However, none of that was ever super intriguing to me. And the whole saddle girth investigation thing, I was just like, okay, this does not matter. And in the end, yeah. Then maybe that's really my worst of the best, but I'm already stuck on the feast thing. So awesome because of wit, not so awesome just because I didn't feel like it was very important.
Yeah. I've got a couple in mind.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I don't like necessarily the way that Brandon Sanderson does these parts, but I'll throw them in there. So the part at the very end with Caravangian.
Yeah.
That was kind of a surprise because he doesn't seem to be a character that I don't know. He didn't seem as ominous necessarily as the moment with Seth saw, the head drop, like, oh wow.
And he's not in the book hardly at all. He seems like he's just some very, very side character.
Exactly. And so that was kind of unsatisfying at a moment for me, just because it was,
you didn't feel like it was like really earned. Like you had this great like character arc with Seth, like going and killing all these people, and then he comes and there's just like an old man that he walks up to.
Yeah,
I could see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Like this, the scene was cool when Seth walked up and the guy didn't turn around. Like that was really cool. But to have Taravangian, be the main guy for this, that was surprising, but also not completely satisfying, at least at this moment.
Okay, that's fair.
So, yeah, and another part, I think, Kaladin's girlfriend, or the girl that he liked, back in Hearthstone.
Laurel.
Yeah. That was a sad, a sad story, I think, in general.
Yeah.
You were into the romance. You were hoping it would work out.
Oh yeah. Or at least I wasn't hoping that she would go with Rochon. Like that was the worst way to end it. And I don't know.
It does kind of give you like, it kind of injects you back into like this maybe medieval setting that you're used to seeing, like where this young girl is forced to kind of marry this to city lord. That kind of, it kind of brings in that flavor of fantasy a little bit.
It doesn't sit great, but it does seem somewhat realistic based off what's happening.
Yeah.
This is maybe not always a popular opinion, but I don't love the romances in Sanderson's books. Some are better than others. And that's fair. This was one where you're like, what was the point of that? Because it was just, Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for going on this journey with us. We've now reached our destination. Bada boom. Sorry, I had to do that.
It's a great one, Steven.
Yeah. Don't know how I came up with it. So if you like Phantology, you can find more at www.phantologybooks.com, and you can support the show at patreon.com/phantology_books. Thank you so much to our special guest, Daniel, my roommate, who actually I didn't even convince you. You just decided to pick up the book. So excellent decision.
Well, maybe it's because of the shrine that you have in your room, Steven. Maybe you walked in there, you're like, oh, this looks pretty cool.
What, a shrine?
Yeah, definitely.
This is a professional setup for my job, Ben. It's not a shrine. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see everyone next time.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Phantology. If you'd like to let us know your opinions on all things sci-fi and fantasy, join our Discord. Invites are in the episode descriptions below. If you'd like to support the show, like these fine folks here, you can do that at patreon.com/phantology_books. Patrons get early access to new episodes, exclusive postings, and exclusive Discord benefits. But of course, just listening and watching and sharing with your friends and family is support enough. Journey before destination all.